So I'm going to continue about the friend we're going to meet up with while we're here. So my son's second friend. It's so funny because both these friends we met in the complex that we lived in. So my son's second friend lived directly upstairs from us. The girl lived downstairs and across the door or the divide from the apartment we lived in. Anyway, so my son's friend that we're meeting up with tomorrow, he moved into the apartments, and by this time the girl had left. And let's see, did they? No, they always stayed upstairs from us. But so one day, me and my son came home, and we see this kid, and the kid is on his bike, but the kid looks pretty small, and we're thinking, and my son's like, yeah, he's probably really young, you know. We didn't even pay him any attention because my son said he was too young to play with. So anyway, we see him riding, you know, all summer long, and my son's doing his thing, and so finally, we ended up we went to school and enrolled him, and that day my son comes home and says, "Mom, guess what?" And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "That kid we saw all summer, he goes to my school and he's in my class." So I'm like, "No, really?" So that's pretty funny because we both thought he was too young to play with my son, you know. So the fact that they ended up in the same class was just pretty cool. So anyway, the kid starts hanging out at our house, and he and my son got along really well, and he was hyperactive, and his mother and stepfather lived upstairs with him, and he had told us that his birthday is March 15th, and my son's birthday is March 14th. So they were only a year old, but even till this day, my son is like 6'1", and this kid is probably about maybe 5'6", but there's such a difference in height. But they've been good friends, you know, from the day they found out they're in the same class. And this was another case where he hung out with us a lot too, and I didn't mind because one, I think women who marry or date men and live with them and they have kids, I think it's really, really hard. It's hard on them because you know, because I've gone through that. You know, I've gone through dating somebody and had them, I guess, not try to interact with my child, but interact with my son at a stage where they hadn't earned that right to, oh, I wouldn't say to parent, but, you know, if you just met my son and immediately start disciplining him, you know, first of all, I'm his parent and I'm there and I am going to discipline him. And when he does wrong, you know, I will be there. You don't have to do it for me. I'm there, right? We're not married, you know. So anyway, so I kind of picked up on the fact that there was a lot of tension between him and his stepdad. And I mean, I lived upstairs from them, so I could hear his stepdad screaming and yelling and, you know, all of that stuff anyway. So, and actually I'm wrong. They didn't live directly above from us. They lived on the other side. Actually, they lived right over where that girl lived before. And so anyway, this kid would hang out with us, and I didn't mind because it meant, you know, my son had someone to hang out with, and we got to know each other really well. And, you know, his mom would call me his mother from another mother, you know, that it pretty much referred to me as his mother. And she had another kid with her then husband, and I could tell it was just stressful because sometimes I'd go throw the trash away and she would be outside crying, you know, and so I didn't want to I wanted to keep the kid as much as possible because I knew that he put a lot of strain on their marriage, and I know as a mother, she would take out for him, you know, try to protect him from the stepfather. And so, anyway, I always thought the stepfather was kind of, I don't want to swear, but yeah, I thought he was that kind of person. So I didn't, but that she chose him. I didn't. In the meantime, I try to include the kid in whatever we did because my son, there weren't any kids in that neighborhood. Actually, there was one other girl, and I might talk about her later, but besides her, there were no kids in the complex. So, and the complex was kind of set to the back of the street, so, and kind of in a secluded little portion of the neighborhood. So anyway, they hung out together. Once again, we go skiing together. He snowboarded like I do, the kid did, and and my son skied. I snowboarded with the kid, and we would go skiing together. And several times, the ex-husband had a cabin, and we'd go up there and hang out. And I remember an incident where we were going to my son's birthday, and this is pretty much about racism in Idaho, but in Idaho, if a cop saw me, I knew I was going to get pulled over, not only because, I'm black, but because I was driving. After I got divorced, I always drove old cars, whatever I could afford, I drove it. So anyway, so we were passing by this intersection, and this cop is pulling out from a gas station, and he stopped. And as I pass him, I make eye contact with him, and he sees me. I see him. He knows I see him, and I'm like, oh, thinking to myself, oh, great, this is not gonna go down well. So we continue going. I check, make sure I'm going the right speed limit. I change lanes, put on my blinker, and when I change lanes, about maybe 10 seconds later, his lights go on, and I'm like, okay. So I pull over, and the cop pulls over with me, and he comes up to my window, and he says, do you know, I don't know why they asked you that either. Maybe because they think you're going to confess something, I don't know. So he says, do you know why I pulled you over? So I said, no. And he says, well, your, I think he said your registration is expired. And I said, no, it's not. It's at the end of, it's supposed to expire this month. At the end of the month, it'll expire. And he says, no, it's expired. And I said, I don't think so. And he says, I ran your plates. No, so anyway, so I said, I don't think it's expired. So he says, no, it's expired. So I said, well, how'd you know? And I said, so did you run my plates? And he says, yeah. So I said, well, I didn't do anything for you to run my plates. I was going the speed limit. I didn't make any illegal lane changes. So why'd you run my plates? And he says, well, that's my right. There's nothing wrong with me running your plates. So I said, so were you profiling me? Are you being racist? Is that why you pulled me over? Because I'm black? And he says, no, I have every right to run your plates if I want to. So I was like, dude, we didn't do anything wrong. And my son and his friend is in the back of the car. And I'm thinking, here we are on the way to his birthday party, right? And I'm like, we didn't do anything wrong. Why didn't you pull me over? And he says, well, because your license expired. Well, you didn't know my registration was expired because it doesn't expire till the end of the month. And he says, well, I ran your plates. I was like, well, so why'd you run my plates? So there has to be a reason why you ran my plates. And he finally says, so we're arguing backwards and forwards, and he finally says, is this the kind of, is this the example you want to set, is this the example you want to set for your son, you know, in how to behave in life? And I'm like, and that really like triggered a thought or triggered my reaction because the next thing I said was, is this the example you want to set to my son, who's only, I think he was 6 at the time, only 6 years old, that every time he passes by a police car, he can be aware or he will be afraid of being pulled over because he's going to be pulled over? Is this the kind of example that you are trying to set for my son? that being a black man, no matter where he is, he's going to get pulled over if a cop sees him. And I think that really like sunk in because he kind of went like this and then he went, okay, you know what? Forget it. Forget it. He says, you need to go and get your car. Apparently, I hadn't got my smog done. I didn't realize it. In fact, I thought I'd have till the end of the month to get it smog. But he says when you get it that month that it needs smogging, you have to get it before the month or whatever. As soon as you get it, he said that I needed. He gave me a warning. He says you need to go get your smog tested so that they can remove the suspension off your registration. He says that's it. You go. Have a good day. Bye. And as this is going on, my son's in the back, and both he and my friend are, or his friend are, are upset and crying, and it just made me feel so sad that he had to see that, But anyway, so after that, I told them, I said, you cannot act like mom acts when you are pulled over. If they ever pull you over, you do exactly what they say, you know, because one, although I'm black and it's not like California. In California and bigger states, they don't care if you're a woman, they don't care if you're a child, they don't care what you are. When the police interact with you, even if you're passive and you do nothing, you still might get killed. So I was like, you know what? You can't respond like mom's responding. Idaho, Idaho's pretty young when it comes to dealing with race, you know, pretty innocent still, Yeah, they do racially profile, but they are not to the level of thinking, okay, you talk back to me, bam, you're dead. You didn't stop, bam, you're dead. And in any other state, you can't get away with that. And I've had that discussion with them. I'm like, don't be like me. You can't be like me because if you do, you're going to be dead. I am still here talking about it, but and you know what? And I told him, I said too, if I lived in any other state, I probably would not mouth off to the cops like this because I would be dead too. But you can kind of get away with it. I don't know how it is now in Idaho, but probably you can't get away with it now in Idaho. But I tried to tell him that, don't be like me, because, yeah, I was very angry and lived in Idaho. Just seems like everywhere I turn, I was like knocking my head against the wall. There's just like, just no, it was just tough. It was just really hard. Anyway, another incident that happened was, so I guess this video is about racism in Idaho, I guess. But so another incident that happened was, we were, and this happens all the time, even out here in California, it happens all the time. People notice I'm black, bam, you know, they have to lock their cars 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, right? So we had gone to Winco and we got out of the car and there's this white lady getting out at the same time. So she's looking at us and smiling and she locks her car like 3 times. And we're walking away from the car and she looks at us again and she locks her car another 4 times, and we're almost meeting up and she locks her car like another couple times. So by then I'm like pissed off and I'm like, I said, so do you not believe in the car makers and the locking systems they put in their cars? Because, one time pressing that button and your car's locked, don't you trust them? Don't you trust the locking mechanisms they put in your car? Because you've locked your car over 7 times now, If you don't believe in that lock, maybe you should take it in and get another car because, like I said, you've locked your car over 7 times. It's just like, what? What? And I'm like, oh, I guess you don't realize that, do you? That you just locked your car over 7 times, and she's like, well. Sounds like, so, I mean, I was so angry. And so me and my son just walked off. But after I calmed down and we'd gone shopping, everything, she happens to be in front of me in the line. Going, oh, great, poor lady, because I'm like so over it. I guess that's one of the things I like about myself is that I get angry and then I'm over it. That's it, I'm done. But she definitely wasn't over it because she looked at me and she's like, and then she's like complaining to the cashier, and everything. And so I was like, whatever. So I got in another line, and the whole while she's looking back at me. But I mean, I know it's bad, but I just get so tired of people doing that. It's like, you know what? And then to insult me, to me, it was an insult that she's locking her car 7, 10, 15 times, and she's looking at me and smiling at the same time. It's like, you know, I know why you're locking your car because you're looking at me and locking your car and walking. I have, that's the thing, is that people think that you want what they have. I don't want what anybody has. I want what I have. I like the stuff that I have. I don't want what you have. If I see something you have and I can afford it, I want my own. It never feels good to have something that's not yours because you're afraid that it's going to be taken away from you. So I'd much rather pay my own money for it. So anyway, my son would get so upset because